I'm bringing you guys a story today that has some of the worst floor mats I've ever seen. We're talking about parents being taken advantage of by their good-for-nothing daughter. And when I say that, I'm letting you guys know that this story is absolutely mind-boggling. You might not even believe it.
Hey people, you can call me OP. I have a family dilemma I need to vent about, and I feel like I have nowhere to turn. In fact, calling it a dilemma might be the understatement of the year. My family's always been dysfunctional and, of course, toxic, but this time I think they all have truly gone bonkers. There's a lot of background information to disclose here, so this is going to be quite a long first post. First, I have to tell you about my older sister, Victoria. She's always been the golden child, according to Mom and Dad. For the love of all that is holy, I cannot even begin to tell you why either of them reached this conclusion. Victoria's always been the archetypical, spoiled, rotten sister. She's been pampered and babied from day one, and she's mastered the art of just, learned helplessness. She shuts down in the face of any sort of adversity or responsibility, and she expects others around her to pick up the slack for her. Considering my parents have enabled her to become the entitled beast that she is today. I can't say I blame her. I mean, heck, sometimes I wish I had an easy life just like Victoria does. You see, I was a younger child, but I immediately excelled at academics and general independence. My parents tried to give me extra attention since I was the younger child, but Victoria got jealous of the attention I was receiving and would pitch a fit and throw tantrums to get her way. Even on my birthday, my parents would buy Victoria gifts to keep her appeased. Did I receive extra birthday gifts on Victoria's birthday? No. My parents took advantage of the fact that I was more mature and far less demanding than Victoria, and often treated me like I was an adult. It's normal for older siblings to get jealous of the attention received by newborn siblings, but Victoria never grew out of her childish mindset and has remained a thorn in my side for most of my entire life. I merely just deal with my parents and Victoria nowadays because I just simply cannot afford to move away from my economically depressed town. I'm lucky to even have an apartment in this economy. Unfortunately, as a result of living in the area, I seem to remain perpetually entangled in the drama my family attracts and seems to virtually thrive on. Victoria has never had trouble attracting men. Even I must admit she's somehow still an attractive woman despite years of partying and general unhealthy behavior. Well, she's gone through 2 marriages and a few ruined engagements, and she has 4 children. 3 are from marriages and 1, of course, is from an affair. Victoria is a serial cheater who sabotages every relationship she's ever been in by being promiscuous. But she always manages to portray herself as the victim to my parents and family members, so they just do nothing more than blow smoke up Victoria's rear end. I was more of the studious nerd type who was never a hit in the dating scene. I kept my nose to the grind and stayed responsible. I've dated here and there, but I think I'd take me, several lifetimes to go through the amount of relationships Victoria's just blown through. I don't judge Victoria for having a lot of partners. That's her choice as a grown adult. It would be different if her relationship business was merely just that, her business. Instead, she gets the whole family involved because Victoria seems to believe that she's the center of the universe. My parents have nearly spent themselves in financial ruin over the years, footing the bill for Victoria's 2 weddings, as well as helping pay for her divorce court fees. Victoria always gets screwed in divorce court because the divorce is always so clearly her fault. Don't get me wrong, she doesn't exactly pick guys who are winners in life. Her first husband, Ted, was addicted to crack, and her second husband, Filbert, is currently in prison for robbing a gas station. So not exactly the prime candidates for a Nobel Peace Prize, if you catch my drift. But it was still Victoria who managed to tank these relationships. She actually cheated on everyone, and I know she's going to do it again. When Victoria was between relationships, she would often ask to crash on my couch at my apartment, or she would stay with my parents. She liked it better at my parents' house where she was pampered, and whenever she stayed at my apartment, she would always disrespect my boundaries and break all my house rules. She would not pick up after herself, and instead of working or contributing to the apartment in any way, she would just drink alcohol, play on her phone, watch Netflix all day long, and she's good for nothing, I tell you. Of course, when I would inevitably give Victoria the boot and tell her to hit the road, I'd get some call from Mom and Dad telling me what a mean, unsupportive sister I'd become. Meanwhile, Victoria would be sitting around at their house doing the same thing she did at my apartment, and Mom and Dad would just sometimes tell her to get a job, and she would just go and pitch a fit and be petulant until they relented. Then she would go right back to just sleeping with guys, partying, drinking, and carrying on like a fool. I know, it's kind of funny, right? Because Victoria never showed me any support or helped me out in any way. I would work so hard baking snacks and getting things just right for her first wedding. I worked free of charge and got nothing in return. In fact, her first husband got drunk that night and vomited all over my dress. I did not even receive an apology for this transgression. Somehow I'm such a doormat, I even get persuaded and guilt-tripped into doing a bunch of favors for Victoria's second wedding. The marriage was over as fast as lightning. Yeah, once again, I received no thanks for all my contributions. So let's fast forward to the present day at the time of writing this, and Victoria, you guessed it, is once again claiming to have found the so-called love of her life. Wow. Geez, I'm having deja vu at that moment because I've heard this more times than I can even count. Of course, I seem to be the only family member who isn't oblivious to Victoria's nonsense. My parents especially seem to have bought this little spiel hook, line, and sinker. Just like every other time my nincompoop sister spouts this outrageous stuff. I'm so sure all you're wondering, who's the lucky guy to end up with Victoria this time around? It's a guy who goes by the moniker of Bean. He earned said nickname for a reason. This guy's always eating beans. I remember the first time I met him. Victoria insisted that my parents and I go out to dinner with her and Bean to Outback Steakhouse. The meeting did not sound appealing to me, but I did not want to turn down a chance to eat at Outback, because, well, I love their food. Turns out I should have simply turned down the offer, and I figured why they called him Bean that night. Guys, I'm not kidding. This guy brought in a can of beans inside of the restaurant so he could eat baked beans during his meal. He was rude and kept farting through the entire meal and blamed it on the beans. This was stinking up the restaurant. But my parents are suck-ups to Victoria and would not even mention his rudeness. Okay, to top it off, Bean and Victoria conventionally forgot their wallets. Yeah, I heard that before. I did not want my parents to have the financial burden, so yeah, I paid for it. Bean's trying to become a famous SoundCloud rapper. Ugh. So he does not have much in the way of money, but he at least has an apartment his parents pay for. So Victoria's currently shacked up with him. So she's at least out of my hair and my parents' hair on the forefront, but she still manages to find a way to become the center of drama of our lives, and my parents continue to enable the silliness. As you might have guessed it, Victoria announced her engagement to Bean. My parents were so excited for her. Victoria said that since this was her third wedding, she wanted it to be even more expensive and grand than the first two weddings. I already told Victoria and my parents up front that I was not going to be involved in any of the behind-the-scene tasks. I said I would attend the wedding, but would do no catering. I made it clear, crystal clear, that since my contributions were never appreciated before, I would not be helping in any way. As I predicted, I received some pushback and some passive-aggressive remarks from my parents, who bemoaned the fact that they would have to do all the work for Victoria's third wedding. And I suggested to Mom and Dad that they can simply, tell Victoria the word no for once in their life. They didn't seem to get what I was laying down. Figures. Well, things took a turn for the absurd once I learned that Victoria and Bean planned to have their wedding at the fanciest venue in town. They wanted to hire ballet dancers, trapeze performers, and do acrobatic stunts. They wanted to hire a cover band that would do their favorite songs by bands like Creed, Limp Bizkit, which is hardly music suitable for a wedding. Victoria and Bean's demands just kept getting more and more outlandish and childish and, more importantly, expensive. So Mom and Dad continued to hint to me that they need some money to help with the wedding. But I kept my firm stance against it, such, I wanted to establish a boundary and hold my ground with these people. Well, next thing I know, Mom and Dad announced that they're going to need to stay at my apartment for a little while, and I asked them, what is the problem? They told me they sold their house to pay for Victoria and Bean's wedding. I know, I nearly passed out from shock after they told me this. Guys, this was our childhood home. I mean, for better or worse, through all its ups and downs, I had a lot of memories growing up in Mom and Dad's house, and they just sold it like it was an old pair of shoes. I was disgusted, I was appalled, I wanted to be respectful, but I chose not to hold my tongue. I plainly told Mom and Dad that they're simply out of their minds for doing such a thing, especially without consulting me or getting their finances in order first. Mom and Dad explained that they simply had to sell the house to fund Victoria and Bean's wedding. Ben wanted a fireworks display, of course, an elephant, and other bizarre extravagant attractions in addition to all the things I mentioned earlier. I could not believe my ears. It felt as if we were living in some sort of alternate universe where common sense had been tossed aside in favor of reckless chaos. Even though a small part of me felt for Mom and Dad's foolish decision, I had to tell them no when they inquired again about staying at my apartment. I mean, I was stretched thin enough as is. I was juggling 2 jobs, Taco Bell and Burger King. And meanwhile, Victoria and Bean were lazier than a sack of potatoes. And they were getting the best wedding in history. It was just mind-boggling. I told Mom and Dad that they should consider moving into Victoria and Bean's apartment. The wedding was an extravagant, over-the-top one, as I expected. Mom and Dad's every last penny went into the ridiculous production, and there were beautiful women dancing, there were men on unicycles performing dangerous stunts. It was quite a sight to behold, I must admit. The irony was not lost on me, of course. That's all this time. Effort and money had gone into the wedding for a marriage that would probably not even last a year. To top it all off, Bean had his can of beans by his side the entire wedding, and I nearly gagged watching him take a drink from the can of beans during the ceremony. He even slurped it. Victoria's 4 children ran wild at the ceremony, as they always did, and I know it's not their fault, but Victoria's children have always been absolute brats who act out. Well, I do know why they act out, and I do feel bad for them. Victoria is a horrible parent, and the men in Victoria's life are not much more suitable candidates for a job as momentous and serious as parenting a child. Still, I've never been fond of 4 children. One of them had a water gun at the wedding and squirted me right in the face. It seems like I cannot just go an entire wedding of Victoria's without being humiliated in some sort of fashion. Still, I remained mature and endured the rest of the wedding. Mom, Dad, Victoria, Bean, and the 4 kids all went back home to their apartment, and they invited me over for a few more celebratory drinks after the wedding. Against my best and most, best instincts, I'll just say, I decided to tag along, telling myself that I would have just had 1 or 2 drinks and head back home. I know, after all I've been through with this festival of clowns, you would have thought that I would have known better. I just wanted to have a semi-normal evening. While we were in the apartment, Bean and Victoria mentioned that Mom and Dad have something serious to discuss with me. You see, Bean and Victoria are not in a place to take care of their 4 kids, said Dad. What are you trying to say? I asked. Oh, since Bean and Victoria have to take care of me and your father, we all decided it would be best if you could adopt their 4 children. That's what my mom said to me, and she said this as if it were just merely a routine suggestion and not the most ludicrous assertion ever uttered in human history. Well, at this point, I had a bit of liquid courage from the beer that I drank, so I truly let them have it. I told them up front that this marriage was not going to be Victoria's last. I told Mom and Dad that the reason Victoria is such a screw-up, and I told them that karma was going to bite them both right in the end. I'm sitting home right now, fuming over what's happened, and I can't believe those clowns had the audacity to just assume I'd be totally fine with taking on raising 4 brats. 4 maladjusted children when I'm barely scraping by working 2 jobs in the fast food industry. I mean, this is ridiculous. Guys, can you please just give me some feedback? Tell me I'm not out of my mind. I'm not out of my mind. Update number 1. Hello people, OP here with yet another update. Thank you all for the supportive and kind comments that I've received so far. I'm glad people out there understand what it's like to be living in the shadow of a worthless sibling who has manipulated the family beyond belief. After reading some of your comments I decided to do something I should have done a long time ago. I've decided to take a scorched earth approach to dealing with Victoria and Bean. Playing nice with them has gotten me nowhere, and I needed to do something about their 4 children. Because if they were trying to pawn them off on me, who knows what they were willing to do to get out of their parental responsibilities. So I did something. I decided it's best to report the whole situation straight to CPS, Child Protective Services. Well, I felt bad knowing that Victoria's children would end up in the foster care system. I knew that 4 of them would be better off being far away from Victoria and her rotating assortment of questionable men, so I spilled the beans about everything shady of Victoria's life. And CPS was quite interested in what I had to say, especially when they found out Victoria and Bean were trying to convince me to adopt their 4 kids. The CPS call did not paint my parents in such a great light. Well, the CPS agent said that they would send out some investigators to take a look at the premises and evaluate the situation themselves. Tonight, I'll be going to bed with satisfaction of knowing I did something to help raise those kids. I hope this works out for them because Victoria and Bean do not deserve to take care of those kids. Update number 2. Well, it's OP back with another update for everyone. I wish I could say this whole fiasco's blown over, but things seem to be escalating. I should have known better than to expect Victoria and Bean to go down without a fight after I reported them to CPS for neglecting their 4 children and trying to convince me to take them off their hands. I woke up this morning and went to my car. I ended up being late for my breakfast shift at Taco Bell because my tires had been slashed on my car. I also noticed tons of litter and trash in my yard, and it looked as if someone had placed dog poop on my doorstep. Bean seemed like the typical person who would be so immature. Well, you know what? My suspicions turned out to be correct. As it turned out, because I viewed my camera system. My cameras are going 24/7, and in my town, you can never be too careful. I'm glad I got cameras because now I have more concrete evidence of what type of person Bean is. The police told me they were going to arrest him immediately, and they were, well acquainted with Bean since he was a petty criminal who was frequent to trouble the law. Update number 3. Hello, OP here, with another update. Things just keep getting juicier and my revenge plan only grows stronger by the day. So, Bean was arrested, just as I planned. Hey, it was his own damn fault for thinking he could mess with my yard and mess with my car. I was late for work and had to explain the whole embarrassing situation to my boss. This led to me picking up some extra shifts at work to make up for the time I lost due to Bean's idiocracy. I need every dollar I can save up this economy. Well, I was at Burger King tonight doing my usual fast food work. Suddenly, I noticed someone sitting at the table in the corner. It was Victoria. She was with a mysterious-looking young man whom I did not recognize, and I instantly knew what was coming. But then I had my suspicions confirmed, just as I thought. You see, Victoria, she went ahead and just straight up leaned in for a kiss. She kissed the man at the table, and it appeared Victoria had herself a hot date right there at the local Burger King. My parents had texted me earlier that day and told me they were the ones stuck bailing Bean out of jail, and they admonished me for calling the police on him. Yeah, funny enough, they did not seem the least bit bothered that Bean vandalized their own daughter's property. They should have let the man rot in a jail cell. Yeah, it's funny. He must be at the apartment with my parents while Victoria is on her hot date. How pathetic. I knew Victoria could not abstain from engaging in adulterous and unfaithful behavior. I decided to snap a photo of the meeting and film some footage on my cell phone, and I then sent the photos and videos to Bean right there on his Facebook page. He was quite easy to find on Facebook since he was promoting his rap career all over the place, spending money on ad spend. That absolutely led to nothing. Maybe this would give him something to rap about. Some people might say I'm going too far doing all this, but you know what? I don't really care. It's not like I'm the one who made Victoria cheat. She has a compulsion to cheat, and to do this to Bean after he went and vandalized my property and got himself arrested out of the name of loyalty solely for Victoria, that just shows you how crappy and worthless this vile person truly is. I felt no remorse when I clicked the send button on my messenger app. This was going to be quite entertaining to watch unfold, and if these people love drama so much, I say let them stew in it. Update number 4. Hey guys, I'm back for another update, and I do have a lot of stuff to fill you all in on. So I'm going to do my absolute best to cut right to the chase. So my plan to disrupt Victoria and Bean's relationship by sending Bean evidence of Victoria cheating on him with a strange man at Burger King, it worked. I was looking to spread some chaos, and I certainly achieved that goal in spades. However, things went a little too far and did get a bit out of control. I guess I should have expected as much with this family. Apparently, Bean was so mad after receiving the photographic evidence of Victoria's infidelity that he actually beat Victoria to a pulp as soon as she got home from her date at Burger King. That's right, he beat her up right in front of my parents. Victoria's not my favorite person in the world, obviously, but I don't think she deserved to be assaulted like that, and not in front of her own damn family. According to what Mom and Dad told me earlier, Bean completely brutalized Victoria to the point that her face was barely recognizable and she was in the hospital with serious injuries. My parents had no choice but to call the police on Bean since they could not intervene and stop him from beating up their daughter. So not even a full day after my parents blew their money on bailing Bean out of jail, they had to call the police to come pick him up and put him back in the exact same spot they spent their money to get him out of. How pathetic. Of course, instead of using this situation as a wake-up call and just realizing how chaotic and crazy Mom and Dad have allowed their lives to become, thanks to Victoria's nonsense, these two had the audacity to call me up, blaming me for the whole thing. Let me tell you exactly what my dad said. If you hadn't sent Ben the picture of Victoria and that guy at Burger King, our daughter would not be in the hospital right now with severe injuries and sky-high medical bills. It's not my fault. It was Victoria's choice to cheat on her husband. I can't control how Bean chose to react to the information. Then my mom said, "You still should have discussed the matter with us, Victoria. I'm sure Victoria would have been able to explain the whole thing, but you had to make it look like something bad and get our daughter beaten up." I can't believe this. That's when they told me they expect me to pay for Victoria's medical bills from the beating. I laughed in disgust right there in their face. They told me I need to show some respect, and then my dad said, "We paid for the extravagant wedding. We sold our own home, and you could not even adopt Victoria's children to pay us back, and now you just keep meddling in her life, trying to get her hurt. Mark my words. Me and your mother are suing you until you fork over the money for Victoria's medical bills." I told Mom and Dad to shut their traps, never to contact me again, and I hung up the phone. Guys, I think I'm ready to just straight up cut ties with my family for good. It's clear that they're not on my side. I'm 33 years old and I'm not getting any younger. I'm beginning to think it's time to reclaim my life as my own once and for all. Final update. Hey guys, OP here, and this is my final update. I know it's been a while since my last post, but I've been quite busy and had a lot on my plate. I'd like to thank everybody for all the supportive comments in the comment section and great advice throughout this entire ordeal. I simply could not have gotten through this without the help of you guys that you've all given me. As far as Mom and Dad's supposed lawsuit is concerned, to get the money for Victoria's medical bills from me, no court in the land would ever even see it. It was frivolous. It was a suit easily dismissed. I mean, there wasn't even a lawyer out there who would even take it. I decided to beat them at their own game before they had a chance to come up with another silly plan that would only serve the waste of everyone's time. I decided it's time to cut my family off from my life for good and get a restraining order against Mom, Dad, Victoria, and Bean. As far as what they're up to nowadays, well, as you guessed it, Bean is still sitting in jail for all his crimes, and I bet he's going crazy because you know what? I heard the jail doesn't have any beans. Victoria has moved on to another man, but her face is messed up from when Bean beat her so badly. She'll never look the same again, apparently. My parents are living in an apartment with Victoria, probably continuing to babysit her. I bet that they'll never wake up from what they've done with their lives, and when they do wake up, it's going to be far too late.
I mean, you really just can't make this stuff up. First of all, Bean was a complete character in himself, but the fact that he decides to beat up his wife over cheating is so absurd. He should have just left. But let's not talk about how the family just sold their house to pay for this wedding after it was the daughter's third wedding. I mean, you would think after the second one, you would not personally invest so much of your own money and just let her deal with it. I mean, who needed that kind of stuff that they got at the wedding? I mean, we're talking about an acrobat, an elephant, or whatever animal they said they had. This story was nuts. But ultimately, I do not agree at all with Bean laying his hands on her. Let me know, though, what you would have done if you were in OP's position, because this story was just so bonkers. I could not believe the parents would put their hard-earned money into the third wedding, basically setting themselves up to lose everything. Guys, drop your comments down below. Let's discuss this one. My name's Mr. Reddito, and I narrate these sort of stories every day. So, if you do enjoy them, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. I'll see you guys tomorrow, and of course, remember, it's cool to be kind. See ya!